As we near the debut of Dragon Ball Super's first major arc in 2017 entitled the Universe Survival Arc, the lyrics to the new ending of Dragon Ball Super may hold clues as to what may or may not happen in the upcoming story. Originally translated by Anime Live Reactions, credit goes out to him, we learn of a very eerie message that was planted within the outro of Super, and joining me here today to tackle this subject is none other than the Daishinkan Emosh for part 1 of our Dragon Ball discussion, where today we're going to be primarily focusing on whether or not the lyrics connect to the Grand Prix. So first off, I wanted to say it's great to have you back on the channel, Emosh. Now for those who want to go on ahead and check out his channel, the link to that will be down in the description. Now this is part 1 of 2 in our Dragon Ball discussion, as I wanted to get your side of the story and what you think may or may not be connected here. Now for those who are unaware of the lyrics goes as followed, and I quote, "An angel and a demon are sitting together like friends. I am in the middle. Which way do I face? Either destroy myself or destroy everything else. They scream in my ear all night. Is there a right way to answer this? The masks of angels are on the faces of demons. They beckon for me to say to me, for the sake of goodness, destroy all evil right now. They say the world is waiting for me." Now, Emosh, I wanted to ask you, do you think this has anything to do with the Grand Priest? I mean, the message is already written in the lyrics, especially with the part when it says, "I'm in the middle, which way do I face?" And, you know, who's promoted in the middle of the poster for the Universal, arc? We have the Grand Priest right in the middle. So, in your opinion, do you feel as if this has anything to do with him, or do you feel like this is something more that we just aren't, primarily looking at right now?
Well, first off, I appreciate you having me on. It's always appreciated.
No problem, man.
And I think, as mentioned by the YouTuber that you mentioned in the beginning of your intro, it's interesting because a blatant look at the lyrics themselves, which I do believe you could also watch the actual video on YouTube. You could just search up the outro for Dragon Ball Super, yes, and that video will come up with the subtitles and everything there that also read the same exact thing, pretty much what we're seeing here. And it's interesting because usually in animes they give when they're giving like intros or outros and things like that, it doesn't necessarily or entirely pertain to what's happening in the anime. I think, especially with Dragon Ball, like if you look at Dragon Ball Super's intro, it's just a general intro. There's nothing really specific that describes what Dragon Ball Z or Super is. The same thing for the outro back then. But now what we have, I think, especially with the outro, which I think debuted in episode 73 or 74, I'm not sure.
I want to say episode 73, yes.
Yeah, it was 73. So it's interesting because not only is the name of the actual song, I believe it's "Evil Angels and Righteous Devil," yes, by the Collectors, yes, and it's blatantly there. It's practically saying, okay, now we're giving you an outro, which is weird because they're using it as an outro. They're not giving us a new. I think we're gonna get a new intro later on, maybe, but it's weird that they're giving us an outro that ironically has something to do with the upcoming arc as we near it. So, as you mentioned, the lyrics are pretty much there. Angels. The only things we haven't really seen in Dragon Ball Super yet are demons. So I'm not sure what they're referring to as a demon, if it's a brand new race that we've yet to be introduced to, or if it's referring to the mortals. Because if you look back to how Zamasu viewed the mortals and the Ningen and everybody, he didn't necessarily say you're a demon, but he pretty much stated that, okay, that we're the failures of gods, we're the sins, and we sin and we do this and this. So one could argue that perhaps they consider us to be demons. I don't necessarily think they're going down that route. I just feel like a demon is a loose term. It could be used in so many ways. But angels are so, when you speak about angels and the like of that, especially in Dragon Ball Super, they are designating a class of people or a class of characters here. So I do believe it's blatantly there that it has to do with the Daishinkan. But however, this isn't a discussion that says that the Grand Priest is going to be evil. Okay, so because you guys need to understand and be able to perceive what evil is. If someone is causing harm to me, right, or to my kind, naturally I would view them as an evil being. That doesn't necessarily mean that their sense of justice is wrong.
Through someone's point of view, I mean,
right, exactly. So you have to look at it from a characteristic standpoint, how the gods operate and how they work. This doesn't necessarily mean that the Grand Priest is evil. We're gonna pretty much dissect what the lyrics mean and what I think they are, and obviously what you think they are. But I wanna emphasize that, because this isn't another video that says, okay, we have confirmation that the Daishinkan is evil. OMFG. you know, and it just gets people angry. This isn't what this is about. This is just a simple discussion that says why the Grand Priest will be the main character, why he will be the focal point as to why these events are taking place.
Now, it says right in the beginning, an angel and a demon are sitting together like friends. Now, what I get from this lyrics, obviously enough, this could be one of many things. I mean, this could be simply nothing. It's just lyrics to a song, or this actually might hold clues as to what may happen. But from what I'm getting here, I feel as if there's lots of deception that may or may not occur during this tournament. Now, again, it says an angel and a demon are sitting together like friends, and it also says the masks of angels are being worn on the faces of demons. So what that tells me is that there's a huge deception that will happen, or at least be under wrap, because if you look at, you know, the premise of 120 characters, you know, minus the gods and the angels that are going to be there, you can't tell me physically or realistically that nobody there has any sort of agenda, like this is going to fall through like the way we all think it is going to be. So I think that, again, we're not, you know, focusing on whether or not the Grand Priest is going to be like somewhat of an enemy, because it's possible, and we're not the writers of Dragon Ball, so we can't really say for sure that he is. Although it does give you certain hints, and especially when it says "I'm in the middle, which way do I face?" And you know, the first thing that comes to mind when, you know, it says "I'm in the middle" is when you look at the poster, we have the Grand Priest in the middle, and I often wondered as to why he was one of the vocal points. If anything, you should have the Omni King as a huge vocal point to this tournament, because this is his tournament. This is his tournament of power. So I often wondered as to why we saw the Grand Priest, you know, right in the middle. And even going back and looking at Battle of Gods, it may not, you know, be relevant to this topic, but if you look at the promotional poster between Beerus and Goku, we see Whis was in the background. Now, although he didn't have any major role, we learned at the end of Battle of Gods that he indeed was the master of Beerus. Like, he was his trainer, he was his teacher, you know, so he is more powerful. So, you know, looking at the Grand Priest on that promotional flyer, it's like, it kind of leaves you wondering. It's like, all right, well, what do we not know about this character that might be introduced in this arc? I mean, is he in fact going to be someone who's going to be posing a credible threat to everyone? Maybe he has his own agenda, or is he simply someone just to be there and govern it, you know, as a referee? But I wanted to ask you, when it says an angel and a demon are sitting together like friends, the masks of angels on the faces of demons, what do you think that means? In your opinion, do you think that has anything to do with the Grand Priest in terms of deceiving even his own children and Whis and Vados and not knowing his own hidden agenda? Or do you feel as if there's something more to it? Perhaps maybe a new character is going to be introduced, a new angel or a new god of destruction, or someone that's presently among that rank that wears the mask of an angel, but in fact it's just deception.
Okay, so I think the first lyric, and let me see, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the 6th line. The masks of angels on the faces of demons. I don't think they necessarily coincide with each other in that aspect. Okay. And here's why I believe. I think since you mentioned the Battle of Gods, I think it's important to give people a little backstory, because there are fans out there that are watching Dragon Ball Super for the first time. And like I said, these are just general, you know, your common fans who are just watching it just, you know, for the sake of having something to watch on a Saturday. But there are those theorists out there, and there are plenty of theorists. So before people say, well, I think you guys are just overthinking it too hard, it's not that. It's that we're just trying to gather you guys together on a table and just say, hey, let's talk about this because I feel this is interesting. So I think it's important to give people a little backstory. And as far as the history of Dragon Ball Super, not including Resurrection F, even though Beerus was involved there, we saw Whis, we saw Beerus, etc. there. But this, we did see Super Saiyan God modes in there, like the Super Saiyan Blue and stuff like that. Yes. But this isn't counting Resurrection F, but it's more so how they introduced Dragon Ball Super. So we have the first, which was Battle of Gods, the Battle of Gods arc, whether you look at the anime or the movie. Generally, right off the bat, we're seeing that the general consensus of this, that there is a new tier and a new class of power that is practically the strongest in the universe. Not the universe is, but in your respective universe. So one could argue, or actually give confirmation, that the gods of destructions are the strongest fighters in their respective universe. That they are the strongest beings in their respective universe, not counting the angels and not counting everybody else above them. So we look at the steps that Dragon Ball Super took. So the first arc was Battle of Gods. They introduced the gods of destruction and Whis, the angels, right?
Yes.
We go into the next arc, which slowly but surely and gradually became much more darker. And it seems to me, and I mentioned this to you off camera, it seems to me like Dragon Ball Super is now, as far as the storytelling or what they're being creative with, the quote unquote villains that are coming into play, it seems like they're catering more to a more mature audience, but not mature meaning like adults. I'm just saying like an older audience in terms of like maybe mid to late teens, 20s, 30s, stuff like that. And the reason I say that is because, again, you have one group of people who watch it casually, then you have another side of people who like to dissect and break down what's going on. So we have the Battle of Gods. The next phase they took also carried over with the whole the God theme, which was the Black Goku and Zamasu arc. Look at how twisted Black Goku was. Or Goku Black, whatever you guys want to call him. Look how twisted he was, and I think that he was the main problem there. It wasn't so much the present Zamasu, and it wasn't so much the future Zamasu, because had it not been for the Zamasu of the previous timeline, none of that would have happened. So he was the main, I think he was the main problem, but how twisted he was, how dark he was. He went on a killing spree. He killed his own people. He killed his own kind, his own brethren, just to get an agenda across, just to get a point across. And the worst part of that, it was he was trying to do this all in a timeline or a parallel world where everything was irrelevant anyway. You know what I'm saying? Because
right.
that timeline was in ruins anyway from all the destruction that it faced with the Cell Saga, with practically everything. You know what I'm saying? So Future Trunks' world or timeline was a mess anyway. So one could say that, obviously, for to have the story to make sense, that's why they ended up designating it in that timeline. But the point I'm trying to make here is that you have Zamasu, who was amongst the gods. He was a god of creation, or next in line to be one, basically a Kaioshin. They're amongst the gods, right? So you have him, and he was, to this day, he was the only one of his kind, the only one of his people, the only one of his class and tier of position that actually turned his back and went rogue and rebelled against everything, against the gods of destruction, against the Kaioshins, against his creators, against his superiors, against everything, just for the sole purpose of saying we have to annihilate the mortals, they're no good because of this, the gods make a mistake, I'm here to correct their sins. But what's the point of correcting a sin that the gods make if you're out to kill all of them anyway? Because he wiped all of them out anyway. So do you see how much darker and how much more evil, and eventually he became evil. His sense of justice wasn't entirely wrong.
And it's not like Black didn't have an agenda. He obviously wanted to rid the gods because he knew that they were going to be a problem. But that goes back to even the Grand Priest. Even if, let's say, for example, if he is somewhat of an enemy, or if he does end up doing the exact same thing, like who can really, come in between the Grand Priest and everything that he wants to, represent, or at least his hidden agenda? Because from what I'm getting at here, I still believe, in my opinion, that this tournament's not going to end in a decisive win. We already had that being Universe 6 versus Universe 7 when we had a deciding winner. Now, I mean, obviously enough, we can all speculate and say, well, is Universe 7 going to win? Yes or no? I think it's blatantly obvious that, yeah, Universe 7 might win. It's like, having a look at it so far, I can't see Universe 7 losing. However, I can definitely see it. And even going back to when Hit fought Goku, and Goku spoke to Hit about, especially overhearing Champa about, you're just my pawns. So, the gods are using these fighters as simple pawns,
exactly.
A part of like a bigger picture. So, you have to ask yourself, it's like, is the Grand Priest also doing something similar to where he's using everyone as a pawn to get to where he wants to be, i.e. even deceiving his own children, being the demon amongst the angels? Because it's really hard to even say, because again, that goes back to what you said, what someone views righteousness as, someone else might view that as being evil. Like, let's say, for example, if you want to, go on ahead and just kill someone for the righteous sake of what you believe, someone else might say, well, that's wrong because you're taking away someone's life. That's evil, So in retrospect, having a look at the lyrics here, do you think that, in your opinion, the Grand Priest is torn between, sort of like Star Wars in a way, like the light and the dark, and being that there's two Omni Kings there, it's like, what more can he do if he does decide to do anything? I've seen various comments talking about how certain people believed that he was the real Omni King, and I don't really believe that, to be honest.
No, definitely not.
I don't think that at all. I don't think that the Grand Priest is the real Omni King at all. But I do think that he is going to play a major role in this. I can't just see him being a mere referee or just saying, you know what, you're disqualified or your universe takes the victory here, because I do think that if anything, we're gonna get to see for the first time, I believe, the what the Omni King does to the Grand Priest in terms of giving him orders, and I do think that we're gonna get to see what the Grand Priest is capable of. I think it only makes sense because so far we haven't seen the Grand Priest do anything aside from talk to Whis. And so you even brought that up to me when off camera when we spoke about how Goku brought the Omni King to meet the Omni King, and the first thing that the Grand Priest said was to Whis, was this your idea, expressing it in a very concerning tone. So do you think that, in your opinion, all the signs and all the clues that we've seen so far in the manga and in the anime, do you feel like that might be connected to what's being said on the lyrics, in terms of there being somewhat of a deception or someone deceiving everyone at this tournament for a hidden agenda?
100%.
Okay.
100%. It's I think the first time I've seen it happen in Dragon Ball, and I think it's justified. I think it's good, because even though we saw that trailer, at Jump Festa, etc., they did make it seem like the Daishinkan was going to be.
Too. He was everywhere.
Yeah, he was the main focal point. But then you also you listen to the song, you read the lyrics of this track, Evil Angel, Righteous Devil. And you start to put two and two together, and you say, well, by our hero's perspective, he could, come across as being a evil adversary or an evil character, but that doesn't necessarily mean that. And this goes back to the point that I was trying to make before, where the phases that Dragon Ball Super has taken. We got Battle of the Gods, we went into the Zamasu Black Goku arc, and now we're also following up with a new arc that is heavily involving the gods, but not just one or two of them, or just one. It's heavily involving every single one in existence, in creation. You know what I'm saying? Now, describing the Omni Kings, both Zenos, we don't know the temperament or the nature, even though, yes, they are both Omni Kings. But however, this is why I had an issue with it back then, because it kind of downsizes what his being is, what his position is, if you have more than one. But since they took that approach, one could say that we don't know the one that he brought from the future parallel timeline, because that's from a parallel timeline. So we don't know his temperament, we don't know his nature, we don't know how he is. So the presence of the present Omni King could have said, "Listen, I'm holding this tournament, blah blah blah." Then the future Omni King could have said, "Yeah, I'll help you with it, this and this." But somewhere along the lines, something happens, and then slowly but surely we're getting introduced to this new arc, which just so happens to be called the Universal Survival Arc. This is for the survival of the multiverse, of the universes, but I think it's just survival as a whole, because if you look at the lyrics now, line number 3 says, "Either destroy myself or destroy everything else." So it doesn't. I'm not sure if this necessarily means where the Daishinkan is talking about him being physically destroyed, but more so maybe being destroyed as a being, given the fact that he is the Grand Priest. Someone like a priest doesn't really have any incentive or any motive to become evil and go rogue out of the blue, out of nowhere. That just doesn't make sense.
But also, what that tells me, I don't mean to interrupt you, but what that also tells me is, when it says either destroy myself or destroy everything else, it's sort of like he has an ultimatum. It's like, do you listen to one? Let's say, for example, if one of the Omni Kings says do it and the other one says no, what do? You're torn between the two, because you can't say no. You can't say no to one and yes to the other, because ultimately enough, you're gonna suffer the same fate. So do you go by the rules? Are you gonna go by actually commenting, just destroying the entire universe? I mean, it's just it's weird. And people say, all right, well, the universes aren't going to get destroyed. During that trailer, we get to see, right towards the very end, before Beerus, the Supreme Kai, and Goku were shown, how there was an entire universe, or, just being destroyed. It was just being blown up, and everyone was shocked. So, my question to you is, do you think that one of the Grand Priest's role is going to be that person to destroy to one of the universes, or do you think that he's just going to be simply the guy to kick it back and just be like, all right, well, I'm just here to make sure that nobody pops off, or nothing crazy happens? Or do you think that his role is going to be much more bigger and more grand, given the fact that he was shown mostly throughout the entire trailer, and until we get more information, we're going to get more from the Grand Priest? And it struck me as a little odd, because if this is the Omni King's tournament, why is the Grand Priest shown over and over and over and over again, even to the point where he was walking down the aisle and everyone was bowing to him as the Omni Kings were sitting in the chair? So what does that tell you?
Well, if you want to dissect the picture, the picture shows all of the gods of destruction and creation, etc., the Kaioshis, etc., bowing down, and then you have the two Omni Kings in the far back, and with the guards there, etc., and the Daishinkan is walking in that direction, etc. I think as a whole, they're going to bow they're going to bow their heads in the presence of the Omni King regardless. I don't necessarily think that they were specifically bowing their heads to the Daishinkan, and even so, it could be just out of respect, but more so in the presence of the Omni King. Every time we've seen just the Omni King in general, the Beerus and Champa are quick to bow their heads. The only people who end up not bowing their heads entirely are Whis and Vados. You see what I'm saying? So I think that's if you want to look at it from that aspect, that's to dissect that picture. But granted that obviously it's apparent, whether you look at the pictures, the trailer, whether you look at the lyrics, that the Grand Priest is the main focal point here. I just see what makes me crazy is just how are they going to incorporate all this? Because on paper, it looks beautiful. Like the potential storyline, the lyrics coinciding with what could happen. The potential character development, because now we're not just seeing Goku, we're talking about angels, gods of destructions. Everything is at stake here, man. So
right.
On paper, it looks beautiful, and given Dragon Ball Super's track record as of lately, it's like I mentioned it in our last discussion where I said they really have to be careful how they approach this, because giving the Daishinkan the focal point or the focus here, only to have maybe to rush it or to make a mistake with how they format the tournament and stuff like that. I think the tournament is just there as a reason for to destroy everything. Like if we look at either destroy myself or destroy everything else, I think that perhaps the Daishinkan is, like you said before, is torn between making a decision. And I think as the tournament progresses, we're going to see something happen. I don't think the tournament will end with a winner specifically. I think something overall will happen. But then again, you got to think to yourself, if something does happen, we're not in a parallel world. There's no more timelines that you can travel to. I think they put a stop to that. So if everything ends up going bye-bye, where do they go on from here? How do they do it? And it's just really interesting. I would imagine that we're going to see a lot of drama, that people or that beings or characters are going to get killed off. But I just think that the Daishinkan, granted as to who he is and his position, he's the Grand Priest. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
I don't think he would just come out of nowhere and say, well, I have to be evil now. It's just more so he's torn. He has to do it because there's no yes or no answer here. It's just we see in the sixth line, I believe, or the fifth line, it says, "Is there a right answer to this?" So you could see it. They scream it in my ear all night. Is there a right answer to this? So it's like he's speaking in third person. He's speaking to himself, and the Dragon Ball Super outro is displaying it to us in the form of his thoughts. You know what I'm saying? So it's really interesting. I think it's beautiful. It has so much potential. But the problem with introducing all of this stuff and putting it together is ultimately who becomes the winner and the loser here. Who becomes? How do you create a storyline where you end it and then you proceed with it afterwards? Where is the after? Because you have to design it to a point where yes, you keep the fans happy, but at the same time, if you do decide to continue on with Dragon Ball Super, how do you create a storyline after that? What happens after that?
And they definitely will. They're definitely going to continue.
Yeah. I think gods are going to get destroyed. Maybe some gods will get killed off. I mean, like I said, you gotta understand something. I think that even though the Omni Kings, let's say if they're forcing the Grand Priest to do something.
Yes.
Because line number one, we see it. An angel and a demon are sitting together like friends. Now, this could be one of two things. This could be, obviously, we know that Omni Kings do sit together next to each other, and they are friends.
And they are friends, yeah.
That's the common way to look at it.
In which we will touch up on our second video, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Exactly. It's blatantly obvious there. Or you could say an angel and a demon are sitting together like friends. Perhaps they're talking about Goku and Whis. Whis is training Goku at this point. He's given him a lot of attention lately. Same thing with Vegeta. So, like I said, and this doesn't necessarily mean that it's a copy and paste of the Zamasu arc. This is on a much, much, much more broader scale, because now you have someone who is the strongest person in all the universes, who is torn between something. He's never been put in this position before. He's never dealt with two Omni Kings before, and I think this is why introducing two Omni Kings has ultimately created so much chaos and potentially a big problem in what's going to happen in the future of this arc.
So what's the worst case scenario? I want to ask you both the best case scenario and the worst case scenario for having the Grand Priest be the vocal point. So what do you feel like would be the worst case scenario?
He could die. He could die.
By the hands of who? The Omni King?
I would say he gives his life for some purpose. I would say perhaps because, like I said, I would say, man, yeah, because I mean, either destroy myself or destroy everything else. He does seem like that character. He's the Grand Priest. He's the greatest person in the universe aside from the Omni King. You see what I'm saying? So one could argue that he does have that sole responsibility, because look, like I said in their lyrics, he seems worried. He seems like he doesn't know what to do. He's worried. He's never been put in this position before. And it's one could argue that perhaps somewhere along the line he just says, you know what, F it, like I'll give myself, I'll sacrifice myself because that's my position.
But why would he do that? Why would he go against the grain and, presumably enough, do such a thing, especially if he's in such a high position? What do you think?
I mean, that's up to the writers, bro. I could say, well, I can give people maybe 100 answers, you know,
Right.
but ultimately, like I said, when you look at his position as a whole, he is an angel and he is the highest angel. So one could argue that, you know, when you look at the class, him as an angel, and granted that Dragon Ball Super has taken a religious tone lately, they did the same thing in the Zamasu arc. His design, Zamasu's design overall did mimic and did resemble actions like, you know, like the cross, and there were other religious aspects put into this arc. The same thing going into this, I think, into the new arc. Granted that he is the Grand Priest, he is responsible. You can't tell me that he doesn't have any responsibility at all. He's not there just for nothing, just to walk around and just to sit in front of the Omni King's house. He has a responsibility. He's the priest. You know, he has to oversee something.
Yes.
So even though, and we know that because look, he isn't the epitome of power. The Omni King is. But if you look at if you put the Daishinkan and the Omni King next to each other, you can see that the Daishinkan has something the Omni King doesn't. He has knowledge. He has wisdom. The Omni King, he's a moron. He's just there. Look how easily he manipulated he was by Goku in the Zamasu arc. You know, he just said, "Listen, Omni King asked Goku, what's going on here? There's nothing here. It looks horrible." And Goku's like, he pointed up in the sky. "Oh, he did it. Don't you think you should erase him?" He says, "Yeah, he's annoying." Then boom, he just says, a world like this should not exist. And what does he do? He ends up wiping up the whole universe. Forget the world. He just took everything with him. So it's the Daishinkan, I think, on an intellectual level, he's much higher than the Omni King, right?
Right.
But you have the Omni King, who he's just a wrecking ball. That's just how I see him. I love his character. He's adorable, but he's just a wrecking ball. He's a walking wrecking ball. So when you don't have intellectual knowledge, when you don't have knowledge of anything, it's easy for you to just say, you know what, I don't like it, I'll destroy it because I can do that. As to where the Grand Priest, he has knowledge, he has understanding. And with understanding comes, guess what? Comes emotions, it comes self-doubt, it comes confidence, it comes a flood of mortal-like emotions. And that's what we have here in the outro. It's just a big, like a big diary, so to say, like, you know, like a journal. He's asking himself, is there a right answer to this? You know, and he says, "Oh, they beckon to me and say to me, they screaming in my ear all night, for the sake of goodness, destroy all evil right now." Then you got to ask yourself, what's evil? So what is necessarily evil?
Yeah, people have different perceptions of what evil
is.
Right, yeah.
Exactly. So then you got to ask yourself that, and then who is going to destroy that evil? So will the Daishinkan be the hero? Will he require Goku's assistance? Will he ask him for help because he has influence of the Omni King? I would imagine that he is on both of the Omni King's good side at this point, since he introduced them together. But at the same time, if you just, I mean, I don't even want to go into that territory where I say the Omni King's going to get destroyed or something like that, because I think that's just too much speculation there.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately it comes down to making a choice or requiring the assistance of others. That I think because of the introduction of another Omni King, that it has caused an imbalance in the universe, because, you know, one is the loneliest number, right? So
course, yeah.
you could only have one number one. Now we have two of them, and ultimately that does create problems. And granted that they spoke so many times about how intermingling with time and messing with time and doing this could have catastrophic effects. Okay.
But meanwhile, we saw several times break those boundaries and laws for Goku, as we saw before when he reversed time and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think that some of these laws apply to many of these characters, because if that was the case, you know, they would be confronted like, "Hey, didn't you turn back time? Like, what the hell's going on? You're not supposed to do that."
You're right.
You know?
You're right. Absolutely right. He did it by 3 minutes, and he rewrote something that should have happened as a cause to Goku being a complete idiot. I agree with that. I'm not saying, like I said, but we're talking about Dragon Ball Super plots here. So it's. I think there's a difference between Whis manipulating a present timeline, right? He's not bringing something from the past or the future and intermingling it with each other. He didn't bring the Omni King from a completely different timeline and say, here's your friend. You know what I'm saying? So I think, like I said, when we talked about it a long time ago, where we said we encourage people to pay attention to the dialogue. We encourage people to pay attention to the steps that they're taking, because every arc plays into the next, and that's very apparent here. You know, we got introduction of Beerus. We thought he was the strongest character. Then look how he's pretty minuscule at this point. He has no relevance to anything at this point. Then we got the Zamasu arc, and little by little they started incorporating other godly characters. But now we have the Multiverse Tournament, Universal Survival Tournament, which gathers everybody in one big area. And what that does is it kind of puts the gods and Kaioshins down for a second and it focuses on a much higher and a much broader scale.
But I would also like to assume that if there was someone out there among that god rank that wants to get everything done at the same time, what better place to do it than round everybody up, every single person, even the strongest of the strong in your universe. Because let's say, for example, if all of those fighters, all 120 fighters, they go down, there's nothing that can stop you when you go to these other universes, because you just grabbed 10 of the strongest that preside and exist in that universe. So if you were to go about that and destroy the entire, complexity of the universe, there's nobody that can stop you. So that's what leaves me guessing. It's like I don't want to see the Grand Priest become a villain in a way, or at least someone that goes against the grain, because of two reasons. Number one, you have to ask yourself, it's like, who in the world can stop this guy? Like in the anime, he was considered to be like the top 5, and in the manga, he was considered to be the guy. However, it's like, we all know that at this point, Goku, Vegeta, they're nowhere near his level. I mean, we can even make the argument and say, let's say, for example, hypothetically speaking, they do fusion, right? Vegeta, I don't think would even, come close to stopping someone like that. So it's like, what do you do? And the Omni King doesn't seem like the type of person that would, get in there and just mix it up. I think that he's more along the lines of a guy that's just going to sit back and, if it bothers him, it bothers him. As we saw when he destroyed the previous 6 universes, he was just in a bad mood, and poof, it was gone. So, I also believe that having them mimic that, I think that it would reflect a little bit to the Zamasu story, because, but only on a different tier, because instead of having a soon-to-be Kaioshin or someone that was supposed to be the supreme Kai of a universe, you have the top guy now having to just turn his back. So I don't know.
That's interesting.
It's very interesting, but like in terms of let's say, for example, if the Grand Priest does go against the grain, we see him doing like some sneaky stuff. What's the approach? Like, what do you think needs to be done in order for this to be settled and for this to be solved? Do you think that this would force other fighters to, just instead of fighting each other, they have to now team up to take this person down? Like what do you see happening there? If by any chance that were to happen?
Here's why I don't think the Daishinkan will be evil, or here, and I'm gonna throw in a little twist here. Okay. I'm gonna say here's why I don't think he will stay that way consistently throughout the series.
Okay.
He might come off across as a bad guy for the first half or maybe quarter of the series. I agree. I could see that happening, but I don't see him staying that way. If he does anything to tick off the Omni King or that goes against his wishes, the Omni King could just wipe his ass out completely. You see what I'm saying? So if he does go against the grain, and it depends what you mean when you say that, because when I hear go against the grain, I would say that perhaps maybe if you're referring to him having his own agenda, or referring to him potentially going against ultimately the Omni King.
Like let's say, for example, he just destroys the universe without there even being a decisive winner, and just skipping right to it, and then everyone's like wondering like, what are you doing? Like there wasn't no winner, or like just having you can see the signs, and you can see how the approach he's taking, like he's slowly starting to bend the rules for not just for everyone else but for himself. He's mainly bending the rules for himself, and he's destroying, or he's doing something that raises a lot of awareness as to like his actions and what he's doing.
Right. I would probably say I would look at the lyrics then, and if you could just refer to it for a second. We see, all right. So an angel and a demon are sitting together like friends. I'm in the middle. Which way do I face? Either destroy myself or destroy everything else. That's a key line there. They scream it in my ear all night. Is there a right answer to this? That's a key line there too. The masks of angels on the faces of demons. They're obviously referring to more than one. So that, I guess, that's a little tough. That's a little tricky one there. They beckon to me and say to me. Now, to beckon and say, it's like they're begging him in a sense. They're pleading with him. And for the sake of goodness, destroy all evil right now. This doesn't necessarily... Now, who's they? Doesn't mean it's the mortals. Doesn't mean maybe it's the Kaioshin, the gods of destruction. Because, granted, at this point, I don't think they're going to have that much relevancy here. I think they're going to be pawns, quote-unquote pawns. I think the tables are going to turn, and they're going to have very little power. They're going to be powerless against, very little influence against something like this. And then we look at the last line. They say... the world is waiting for me. And I think that line, that's why I feel like the Daishinkan or someone might end up giving up their life or giving up something as a result of that. It's because that line there, they say the world is waiting for me. For the sake of goodness, destroy all evil right now. Maybe if he ends up being evil, destroy all evil right now, he might end up going with it, given his position. He does have a I feel like he does have a responsibility that's more than just sitting in front of the Omni King's house. They say the world is waiting for me. Maybe it's the afterlife. Maybe it's something that has to do with something. Maybe, you could say anything. But I ultimately don't think that the Daishinkan will consistently be evil, because he can easily be dealt with at that point. You know, there has to be someone there that could easily just say, well, oh, the Daishinkan's doing this, and if he does anything against Goku, Goku could just easily go and say, well, listen, Zeno, this is what's going on, and blah, blah, blah. And then, boom, that's just, I think that's too easy, because then we have a copy and paste then of the Zamasu arc, where we have Goku talking to the Omni King saying, listen, this guy's doing this. Don't you think you should erase him? And then, boom, we're back to square one. So I think he will not consistently stay the way he is. I think his character will develop over time, and as such, it will cause the other characters that he calls upon to develop as well.
I just feel like I personally would not like to see the Grand Priest, you know, become an adversary to other people, because I feel like given his nature and given his character, he seems like a very nice person. So I really can't. And plus, like, even in terms of battle power, when we saw Whis talk to Goku about never to challenge him, because not even Whis himself is able to contest against such a person. So it wouldn't make sense for him to become evil, or at least just have his own agenda where he's labeled as an evil person because of what he's doing or what he wants to do. Because then it's like you have to ask yourself, it's like, well, like who's to stop him aside from the Omni Kings? And if the Omni Kings don't want to do it, you're pretty much put in a position where you're fucked, because you got, even with the gods, even with everyone else trying to, you know, put an end to this, it's like, how are you supposed to do that? So, but post your comments down below, guys. What are your thoughts on the lyrics that was posted on your screen? What are your thoughts in terms of connecting the Grand Priest to this? This is going to be the last video we talk about the Grand Priest, which is why we wanted to really focus in on our thoughts to the Grand Priest. And a lot of you guys were talking about how it's possible, it's not possible. A few people actually brought some really cool things up. One person said that, you know, having to look at the way his demeanor is, he seems like the type of person that just seems like he would deceive you with his words and not with his actions, just to gain your trust and later on destroy you given the nature of his power. And then other people said that, you know, so far, even if he were to become evil or do something of an evil action, it's like, what would happen with his children? Like, do Whis and Vados, you know, stand with their father despite what he does, or do they go against them? So it raises tons of questions, and we don't even know if Whis and Vados have other siblings out there, perhaps that guide the other gods of destruction. So we don't really know. I mean, we can only sit here and speculate, but post your comments down below, guys. What are your thoughts on the Grand Priest, the connection with the lyrics? Do you believe that has anything to do with him? And if it doesn't, what are your overall thoughts as to why they're focusing a lot on the Grand Priest when it came down to the trailer? Why they're always showing him? Do you think his role is going to be minor, or is it going to be major? I would like to know. Emosh would like to know. Thank you all for watching. Once again, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe for more awesome Dragon Ball discussions and content. If you guys enjoyed the discussion, make sure to slap a like on the video, post your comments down below, tune in for more, and we'll be seeing you all in the next video. Take it easy, everybody, and God bless. Peace.